Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I want to make sure you can all hear me and see the screen that I'm presenting. So if a couple of you would just give me some thumbs up here, are you able to see the first screen? Looks good. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you. I was tasked with, let me start my little 5-minute timer here. I was tasked with the job of talking about carbon emissions reductions. And just a little bit about me, I retired at the end of 2015, and I've been a full-time climate activist since 5 years ago, the beginning of February. I've been a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby for the past 5 years, joined and have worked with Pachamama Alliance of the Rochester area for the past 4. I began a resident committee on community choice aggregation. Talk more about what that is if you join my session. That was 3 years ago. Co-founded Color Penfield Green, a local community group, and have currently delivered somewhere on the order of 10,000 hours of volunteer work. And I don't say this to boast or brag. What I'm saying is the commitment to work on solutions for reducing emissions is there. It just has to be there. We have to pull back from that planetary boundary. 5 years ago, I asked myself, if not us, then who? And if not now, when? And I began a systematic approach to work at 4 levels: national, state, community, and individual, all 4 levels that just naturally float. I began to work on solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at all 4 levels. And I want to talk to you about those, and I want to invite you to join me in the efforts to pull back that planetary boundary. We're at 1.1 degrees Celsius warming, as David Attenborough said. We're close to thresholds. We know we have loss of summer Arctic sea ice. We know we are savannaizing the Amazons. We're close to 25% loss of the Amazon rainforest. We know that thawing of Arctic permafrost could create a cascading effect, releasing methane amounts that are just unthinkable, that would further our warming. So the question that he asked, and the question that I ask you, is, how long can we remain at this boundary before we have irreversible changes, and how long can we not act? Well, we don't have a lot of time. As he mentioned, the most important graph ever, this one shows the last 400,000 years of a fluctuating parts per million level of CO2. And it's sobering because through ice core samples going thousands of feet down into glaciers, we know that we've never really been beyond the 300 parts per million level. And I was born in 1950. The level at that time from the industrialized era had reached 311. As of last December, we were at 417, and the boundary of 450 is fast approaching. So we have a problem. If I look at the climate action tracking here, if we look back in November, we have an ambition gap to significantly reduce our emissions. By 2030, we are missing the ability to reduce emissions by 19 to 23 billion tons. So we have got to take action. And I know, as Mary said, this can create anxiety and climate anxiety and so forth. Part of the cure of that is action. So I'm inviting you to take a look at what Citizens Climate Lobby does, laser focused on passing national legislation to reduce CO2 and equivalent greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. You will not believe how close we are to that goal. Join us. I want to tell you about our successes. I'd love you to join us to push this over the finish line. At the state level, New York Renews close to empowering and funding a absolutely amazing policy, Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, passed in 2019. come find out what New York Renews is all about. We have one of the most progressive, amazing policies ready to go at the state level of all 50 states. And I'd like you to ask you to join with New York Renews at the state level to accomplish its goals. The sweet spot of all the participation that I've done is local community groups. And I'd love to join you to look at an initiative of the Climate Solutions Accelerator, and that's color Penfield green. It is just extremely rewarding to work with your neighbors and friends. And finally, okay, my time's up. Finally, at the family level, I'd love to have you come and see what we have done, the Hibners have done at the individual level to go all electric in our home. We are currently 100% decarbonized in our home due to our work with Heat Smart Monroe and other climate solutions initiatives. So please join me in my upcoming session. There's still hope. We can reverse global warming together. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Al. And Carol and Ted Barnett.
Right, thank you. That's a tough act to follow. Nice job, Al. Let me just see if I can find the right one here. Click share. All right, you can see it? Great, everyone, okay, perfect. So I'm gonna start my timer, just like Al did. So what a great production, and thank you to Brady and Mary. I mean, this was really just amazing and very profound. So a little bit about us. Carol and I have been plant-based for more than 30 years. In 1991, we decided to become vegan basically because of the environment. And our decision at the time was all I had to do was demonstrate that it was safer or as safe as the diet we were on. It didn't have to be better. It just had to be as safe because even then, I felt like the climate was just so important. And anyway, anything we could do to contribute to reducing our impact on the climate at that time, I felt would justify making a big change. So, whoops, we've been running the Rochester Area Vegan Society since 1995. Let me just cover this up here so I can see it. And then in 2015, we started the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute to bring about plant-based diet to as many people as possible. We have a 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart, which helps people switch to a plant-based diet. And actually, it was recently certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine among 4 programs in the whole world that are certified as lifestyle medicine programs. And we are now giving it all over the United States and actually various other countries. We have people participating every month. And so we're just really excited to be able to do that. And our jumpstart has reached over 1,200 people. Oops. Why is it not advancing? Hang on, I gotta click on this. There we go. Don't worry about copying anything in our short presentation. We're gonna send a PDF to everybody. And so the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says that animal agriculture generates more greenhouse gases than all forms of transportation combined. And you can see where you can get more information. Again, don't worry about copying that down. Animal agriculture is a leading cause of ocean dead zones, habitat destruction, loss of rainforest, and species extinction. And in 2021, the UN issued a report on the role of the global food system in biodiversity loss, saying that, that there are 3 levers to reduce species loss and protect biodiversity. There's land set-asides, sustainable farming methods, and then moving toward plant-based diets on a global scale. So this is widely recognized among people who think about this. This is a graphic from the Plantrition Project, which you can hear about in our breakout session if you like. And it's the difference in land use between someone on the standard American diet versus someone on a plant-based diet. So it takes about 2 football fields to support somebody on an standard American diet every year, whereas you can support 14 people on those same 2 football fields if they all switch to a plant-based diet. And if everyone did that, we would free up 5 billion football fields worth of land, or at least 75% of the land that's currently in use in agriculture could be turned over to trees, animals, and become carbon sink, the whole thing. Right now, we have a food factory in reverse where we're feeding all this, most of the grains in this country are being fed to livestock and food animals. And we lose about 90% of the calories and protein and all the nutrients. Plus, we end up with food that's not as nutritious. So a much better use of resources would be to switch from animal foods to plant foods because animal foods use vastly more water, land, and fuel than plant foods. You get the same amount of protein from plant foods, such as beans, seeds, and grains. Plant foods contain lots of other nutrients, including animal foods, such as fiber and antioxidants. So it's really in your hands. The amazing thing about it is we don't need any legislation or anybody's permission or a big investment. You don't have to go out and buy a new car or change your light bulbs. You just need to buy and eat different food. So it's delicious. More than 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. It's healthy. That's what I should say there. It's healthy, right? More than half of Americans have at least one chronic disease. So if you try plant-based, and you can reduce your cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugar. And whoops, I didn't mean to go back quite so soon. There we go. And it also makes you feel happy. It'll lift your mood. You feel your energy rise. So many people who go through our programs tell us that all these benefits that they didn't even expect are accruing just from switching over to plants. You don't need to copy these down. We'll send these out to you, but these are places you can get more resources. And please send your email to rochesterveg@gmail.com with newsletter in the subject line, and we'll keep in touch with you. And just remember, you won't feel deprived on a plant-based diet. Eating this way is abundant and delicious. And if you have any questions or concerns, please join us in the breakout session, and we'll take the discussion wherever you want it to go. Thank you so much. And I'm going to
Thank you so much, Ted. And let's hand it over to Nancy.
Sure. That's it.
Oops. Okay. So good afternoon. So I'm Nancy Steinkamp, and I work with Impact Earth, and I'm really proud to be part of an organization that is really offering a solution really across our region, because our mission is to reduce single-use consumption and divert materials from the landfill. And with that last part around diverting materials from the landfill, we really focus on food waste and ensuring that that we pick up food waste in the region and make sure it doesn't go to the landfill. And why is that important? It's important because when your food waste goes into the trash and it goes to the landfill, it does not break down. And so it becomes methane, and it becomes part of the problem. When food is diverted and taken away and either to your backyard compost or through the service that we provide, it actually becomes valuable nutrients for the soil. So one of the services that we offer to individual residents and businesses is our composting service, which you've probably have seen our trucks around town, particularly during the summer. And the bucket that's in the corner of my slide there is a bucket that individual households can get, and they can collect their food waste. And when it's filled up, you can either take it back to one of our drop-off locations, or you could have it picked up at your home. And it's swapped out for a nice, clean, fresh bucket. And what we do with the food waste is we take it to a farm where it is converted into very nutritious compost for your soil. And we actually give that compost back to our customers twice a year. We also work in the schools. We're in the cafeterias. We're teaching children to separate out their organic waste from their landfill trash. And we're a part of businesses that offer special events. We actually have large toters that are at those businesses where we divert the food waste. So we're really contributing a lot. I'm pleased to say that last year we diverted over 1.5 million pounds of food from the landfill. So it's a service that we have that if you don't compost yourself with your food waste, you can actually kind of enlist our help. We also help families to begin to examine their choices. And towards the second part of our mission around reducing single-use consumption, we help you to look at a lot of the packaging. You know, the plastics that we produce right now, we're producing over 380 million pounds of plastics a year, and 50% of that is single use. And a lot of the materials are ending up in our oceans. We know that by the year 2050, it could be more than fish that are in our oceans. So it's an important thing to consider. So as we start to look at the packaging of our products, we start doing things like substitutions. So we have a variety of lifestyle products that can help you start to make substitutions in things that right now you may be purchasing with plastic. So if you look at laundry detergent and shampoo and things that come in plastic containers, you can swap them out for other products. We work with local businesses to produce many of the products, and we do sell those products we have a store in at Eastview Mall, also at our main office on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, and also on our website. You can kind of take a look at what are some of the different products that we sell. I also want to mention that with our composting service, we have different drop-off locations in Rochester, which includes the farmers markets. We're at Lori's Natural Foods, Abundance Co-op, a new location at the Garden Factory in Greece, and also at our main office. But the last area that we are involved in is education, and that is the section that I work with in Impact Earth. I'm an impact specialist, and my job is to ensure that households have a way of looking at all the different choices that you make in your daily life to run your home and moving toward a zero waste lifestyle. And, in the film, it covered, why do we need to reduce our waste? There are many reasons for that. And so like in the breakout session, I will be having us take a look at what zero waste means to you, what are some of the principles of zero waste that you may already be practicing, and helping you to kind of examine that and take a look at what your household's next step might be towards moving toward a zero waste lifestyle. So I hope that you do join me in our session. We'll be taking a look at all the different choices that a home will make. You'll have an opportunity to actually complete an assessment if you like, that helps you to rate your choices from I already do this to I can't imagine ever doing that. So we have a variety of different things that we will be covering, and I hope that you join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And finally, we'll hear from Steve Aman.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, folks. I'm Steve Aman. I live in Arcadia, New York, about 15 miles from the south shore of Lake Ontario, for those that are not from this region. Mary invited me today to talk about trees and reforestation a bit. I am not a presenter. This is a new experience for me, and I'm still going to give it my best shot. I found myself on a life journey of planting over 1 million trees. I didn't start out to do that. I didn't set out on that journey, but about 15 years ago when I was tallying it up, I realized that I had passed that milestone. So I'm not an expert on trees. I am an expert on Christmas trees. I've been a farmer all my life, and Christmas trees was one of the significant crops that I grew. I retired a year ago, and there's just been a natural attraction to trees all my life, and working with the land. Not only the things that David Attenborough and Johan talked about in that movie, the real physical necessities of trees in our world and on our planet, but what they didn't talk about really was the spiritual aspect of it. That's touched my life so much, and I know that's true for so many people as well. I got thinking about this, preparing for this, how our four natures, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, how trees have played into that for me, and probably for most of us. And of course, that physical nature is things like the house that surrounds us and keeps us warm in the winter, and the nuts that come off the trees and the shade that it provides to help keep us cool in the summer. The mental side of it is simply working with trees, if that happens to be something to do as a gardener or whatever. And in my case, earning a living. So you might say the intellectual side of it. The emotional side is when I get to actually go out in the woods with people or gather around a tree. It seems like it's a very common focal point for people to gather around a tree. There's a magnetic quality to them. And last but not least is that spiritual side that somehow early on in my life, I discovered that being out in the woods fed my soul, and it got me grounded in those times when I needed to be grounded. It gave me a connection to that spirit that moves in all things. It gave me solace on those days when I most needed it. So in the breakout room that I'm going to be going to, I don't have a prepared presentation for those that decide to come and join me. What we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation and discussion about trees. I'm very fortunate and blessed to belong to two groups that meet weekly or semi-weekly that have had a huge impact on me. One is ECJ, or Elders for Climate Justice, and the other is a resiliency group that Mary and I and a small group of others are a part of. The reason I bring that up now is because these groups and other work that I've done have made it so apparent to me that the single biggest thing that any of us can do is to talk to others about what's going on with our world, with our physical world. And so that's what we're going to do in the breakout room on trees and reforestation and the like. I don't have the technical skills. I do have a helper, Will Gant, who's going to help show a few slides when we go into that room, and we'll start off with that and we'll see where it takes us after that. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Mary and see where she takes us.
Great, Steve. Thank you so much. So at this point, I'm going to put up breakout rooms, and you'll see 4 options. You can choose from among them. You won't be going back and forth from room to room. Please pick a room and stick with it, because you will have an opportunity to, as I said, everything is being recorded. So you're going to be able to experience every one of these breakout rooms later on.
Thanks everybody for joining me. I think we're going to go ahead and get started with our session. Okay, I thought I would start by talking about national action that you can become a part of, that I have been a part of for 5 years, and that we would love to have you join us. Our work is not done at this level. There is so much more to do. And that is Citizens Climate Lobby. What it is, what are some of the things it's accomplished, how do you get started working with this group? I'm going to ask you at the outset here an extremely important question. And I asked this question of Congressman Morelli about 3 years ago, and intriguing answer. What if there was a first best, now not the only, we're talking about all kinds of solutions. There are many solutions to climate change. But what if there was a first best, most effective, most fiscally responsible action step that Congress could take right now at the national level to rapidly begin reversing the process of global warming in the United States, and specifically? Would you work? Would you join this group to help get that legislation passed? That is my overarching question to you right now. And I'm going to propose an answer. There is an answer to this question. It is under consideration in the United States Congress right now at this very moment. It is called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. and I want to tell you about it. Okay. It works in the following way. So get used to this, because this could become part of our future. It charges a fee per ton on CO2 and equivalent emissions, starting at $15 per ton the first year. It charges that fee to the largest corporations that produce fossil fuels at the well, the mine, the port, the import, the source of entry for that particular fossil fuel. The fee then steadily rises at $10 per ton per year, all the way through to 2100, or as long as it takes for us to reduce carbon emissions. Now, here's the key. The revenues generated from this fee, and I am not calling it a tax. I am not calling it a tax. It's a fee because 100% of the net revenues are returned to households as equal shares. Children get a half share, adults get a full share. After 10 years, theoretically, numbers have been run. A family of four could be in the area of about a $400 per month check, getting a check every single month to defray and offset the costs of rising costs of energy prices due to the carbon fee. The third component, and again, extremely important, it's called a carbon border adjustment. And this means that a big company like Exxon cannot go offshore, have their oil products re-imported back into the US without paying the fee. No cheating. So a fee is assessed at the border to make sure that we have a fair and level playing field. So that's the core parts of this law. Here are the benefits. And I can't wait to get into more detail with this in other future meetings with you. This bill, this law, this policy alone will reduce our pollution in America by 30% in the first 5 years alone, and to net zero by 2050. This policy, if enacted alone, would make us able to meet our carbon reduction goals. Here's why. Here's how. If we do nothing between now and 2050, because we're saving energy, we are actually increasing our renewable energy, but we're also increasing our use of fossil fuels. So that's going to offset and really cause a flat growth in the US. This is just the US now. Here's the problem. You know the problem. The IPCC report that came out a few years ago said that we need, and so did the Breaking Boundaries, we need to stay within the range of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius warming. We really ultimately need to stay at that level. We're at 1.1 now, so we need to stop it from growing. Here's what the Energy Innovation and Dividend Act on its own, if enacted, when enacted, will do to our emissions by 2050. It will bring us to net zero by 2050. This policy alone, polluters pay policy, carbon cashback, money returned to each American household as an equal share, no matter what your income is, equal share, fairness. It's a policy like this that allows then the government to set the direction, only the direction, the fee. Businesses, industry responds as the price of fossil fuel energy goes up. Businesses, energy, technology work overtime. It supercharges innovation to allow us to have affordable and reliable, clean, renewable energy. Moves us very fast towards net zero pollution. This policy will save 4.5 million American lives in the next 50 years. We know poor air quality is responsible for asthma and asthma-related deaths and other types of respiratory deaths, heat stroke due to global warming, due to warming in local areas. So it's going to save lives. And I think really importantly, what makes this a sticky, possible, doable policy is that it's affordable for the ordinary Americans. the money that they receive back in their carbon cash back or monthly dividend check for 60% of all families, and I'm talking about lower and middle income families, for 60% of all families, they will break even or come out ahead with this policy. So that's extremely important. And it's because lower income families are less carbon intensive. They have fewer toys, fewer boats and cars and houses, and they're less carbon intensive. So they're going to come out ahead or break even with this policy. So what Citizens Climate Lobby does, we create the political will for this type of climate change solution by empowering people like myself to become actively engaged in our democracy. And we are focusing on this policy to reduce carbon emissions. It's fast, effective, durable, will not harm vulnerable people of our community. These are our values. We are laser focused on it, this single policy for the last 10 years. We work in Washington when we can go. I've had the honor of walking the halls of congressional office buildings and being in dozens and dozens of meetings with members of Congress and their staffs. We were able to get Congressman Morelli to endorse this policy. There are over 90 plus members of Congress right now in the House of Representatives who are endorsing this policy. He co-sponsored the bill again when it was reintroduced in 2021 in the 117th Congress. So we have solid congressional support. I want to emphasize this policy alone closes the ambition gap in the United States. It does. We currently have a Build Back Better bill with climate measures in it that's stalled in Congress. If this policy was enacted as part of it, and it is being considered, it would close any emissions gaps we have in the United States at meeting our goal of reducing our emissions 50% by 2030. If this policy was applied worldwide, it would do the same thing, reducing those types of ambition gaps. So as I mentioned, it's being considered in Congress right now, the Build Back Better Act. That's stalled. And we don't know if carbon pricing will be a part of the climate provisions in the Build Back Better Act. We hope and pray. Hi, Tim. Okay. We hope and pray that it is. But if it's not, guess what, folks? We are back to square one, lobbying for this as a standalone bill, seeking conservative support as well as progressive support. This is a nonpartisan bill that can do what we need to do as far as carbon emissions go. So we need your help to do things like reach out to people, do presentations, write letters to the editor, and lobby our leaders for endorsement. Go to Washington, meet with members of Congress, whether it's on Zoom or whatever. So I'm going to challenge you. One thing you could do right now, if you believe in this policy, when you get this PDF, click on this link, tell our President Biden, Senator Schumer, and Senator Gillibrand that you want carbon pricing included in the Build Back Better bill. Here's contact information. You will have the PDF. You can click on these links. We meet every third Monday of every month on Zoom right now. So get connected and get a invitation to that Zoom meeting. Join us. Put a price on carbon. Okay. Next, at the state level, I want to talk about a policy called, or a group called New York Renews. It is a coalition over 300 environmental groups in New York State working for the Climate Community and Climate and Community Protection Act to fund that, to do some amazing things, which I'm going to tell you about here in a couple of minutes. So what are the policies? How do you get started working with this group of groups in New York State to bring about some of the most progressive climate policies in the entire United States of all 50 states? So the policies that New York Renews is fighting for: good jobs, environmental justice, 100% clean and renewable energy, worker protections, 50% of electricity from clean renewable by 2030 is a goal, 40% clean energy funds to disadvantaged communities, and 100% human-caused climate pollution eliminated by 2050. So New York Renews is lobbying our elected officials, Governor Hochul, Speaker Heastie, Senate Majority Leader Stewart, right now, lobbying them to include $15 billion for environmental justice, jobs, and clean energy in the coming New York State 2022 budget. So I won't go into read for you here where the money is projected to be going. I will let you do that when you get these slides. But that's how the money will break down to be spent to bring about climate change in New York State. Bring about climate, reducing our climate footprint and bringing about environmental and social justice in our state. Here is an example of how we lobby. CCL is a coalition member of New York Renews. So what you're seeing here is CCL members along with members of Color Penfield Green or Color Your Community Green, lobbying our district assembly member, Jen Lunsford, to co-sponsor and work to pass the Climate and Community Investment Act. So you're seeing how it works. Member groups work to lobby our elected officials in New York State to pass this legislation and to fund the budget. So here are action steps you can take to become part of New York Renews. I strongly hope you will do that. I'm going to put in the chat also a link to, right now there's a campaign to actually go to Albany and lobby our officials, and you can find out where there will be a New York Renews meeting, and you can go and present yourself at that group to lobby our elected officials. So you'll have that information in the PDF document as well. So take action with New York Renews. You can make calls to our elected officials, amplify it on social media. Here are some examples of emails and tweets that you can generate to contact our New York State elected officials. Okay, the third group is perhaps my most favorite of all, and that is working at the community level in an organization called Color Your Community Green. Look carefully at the screen here. See if your community already has a Color Your Community Green group represented. If not, we're going to ask you to start one for a lot of reasons, okay? So what is Color Your Community Green and what are some of the things that's accomplished? I'm especially going to focus on what we have done in Penfield. How do you get started working with this group? We educate, pull together in community our neighbors and elected officials. We identify things we want to work on, high impact campaigns. We prioritize systems level solutions, as the Climate Solutions Accelerator said. We collaborate with all organizations and plug into the existing momentum. We work on composting. We work on reducing waste in our communities. We work on reducing energy usage in our communities. So we're developing new leaders, new climate leaders, and we learn to be allies for environmental and climate justice communities. So community level teams are just an amazing way to get active. Brighton, Penfield, Pittsford, Fairport, Irondequoit, Henrietta, South Wedge, and Richmond are currently active. We're forming teams in the other groups that you see here. Okay. For Color Penfield Green, just to give you an idea of how we have worked on carbon reductions, carbon emissions reductions. 3 years ago, I started a group called the Penfield Community Choice Aggregation Residence Committee to lobby the town of Penfield to pass CCA. And CCA is a program that creates a buying group for all households in a community, in a town or village, to purchase renewable energy and to provide it to all of its residents. We then morphed that group into a Color Community Green group a couple of years ago, and as of December, our CCA program went live. We have two programs. We can opt up to 100% renewable electricity. Our default program is 50%. In 2022, we will be working on establishing community solar program. So that's one program I want to talk about. Another program through Color Your Penfield Green that I started recently is to collaborate with the town of Penfield on the Clean Energy Community Program. We are offering courses on electric cars, your guide to EVs, and are you ready for all electric heating and cooling? We've offered these courses, talk a little bit about those in just a minute. I think the accomplishment of standing up community choice aggregation, in part because of our advocacy and lobbying by Penfield residents, as of December of this past year, 13,600 Penfield households will now receive either 50% or 100% of their electricity from low impact hydropower at fixed prices for 2 years versus the default mix, which only contains 7% renewables. So that is a huge accomplishment in reducing our carbon emissions for a town. In terms of clean energy communities, and this is something beautifully set up for Color Your Community Green groups to work on. Right now, as of today, we've presented our course to over 60 Penfield households and talked to them about the advantages of owning an electric vehicle. If we get 5 of them to purchase a car, or if we encourage them to purchase a car and track that, then Penfield can obtain points in the Clean Energy program, Clean Energy Community Program, as well as grant money, $5,000 for the town to put toward sustainability projects of its choice. Same thing with heating and cooling. Although the points are higher, $5,000 grant money for sustainability projects. And again, over 30 Penfield households have learned about the benefits of air source, ground source heat pumps, installing them, and also reducing their energy footprint with weatherization services and so forth. So these kinds of things are right at the community level and have a huge impact on reducing carbon emissions right where you live. So there's contact information here on how to become involved with Color Your Community Green. You can find out, you can talk to Brady Ferguson, who's the moderator of this call. And if your community is not on the list of one being started that you can join, start one. I really want you to start one if it's not. Lastly, at the individual level, I've been inspired over the past 5 years of work that I've done to decarbonize my home. The picture you're seeing on the bottom right here is the mobile drilling unit, drilling well number 1 of 6 wells for my geothermal system that's right now heating my home. So I want to talk to you about what we've accomplished and how you get started working with HeatSmart Monroe to do the same thing I've done. So 1955 ranch home in Penfield, 1,500 square feet up. This office area down here is 700 square feet. ACES Geothermal installed our geothermal system. And in the PDF document, I have a blog. I've written a blog with lots of articles about everything I've accomplished over the past 5 years, X years. So I encourage you to read the articles in the appendix to see what I've done. But I want to focus first right now on the biggest thing that we've done, which is to install a geothermal system. We replaced our gas furnace and our hot water heater. And you can see it here. We installed a water furnace, Series 7 geothermal, all electric ground source heat pump. Next to that is an A.O. Smith hybrid electric hot water heater. And the cool thing about the system is we have a waste heat recovery. So all the heat generated, not all, but much of the heat generated by the compressor in the water furnace is recovered to preheat water coming in from the street at 50 degrees. Then that goes into the main hot water tank, all electric, when it calls for heat during a bath or shower or dishwashing, etc. So I feel extremely good about having done this. It is an amazing system. And you can read more about that on the project overview there. So bottom line, our pipe dreams came true at the Hibner household. If you look at those white pipes that are capped, that's the emissions, air intake and emissions for the old furnace. That's the CO2 emissions. they're stopped. They're capped. Okay. The black pipe coming in is the geothermal loop. That's the pipe coming in from the ground out in the back. And we are currently 100% powered by renewable electricity. We opted up to Penfield 100, low impact hydropower. And with the addition of a hybrid electric dryer that I have ordered, when that's installed in the next couple of weeks, we will be 100% decarbonized in my home here at Hillcrest High Ledge Drive in Penfield. Extremely proud of that. Thank you, ACES. The wisteria bush that you see there, looking over the loop field where they dug the wells. Seriously, we did not trim it that way. Mother Nature approves. Mother Nature gave us the biggest green heart you can possibly have. And our gas meter is extraordinarily lonely right now. Okay. Who knew heat pumps were so cool? We have rewired our home. So you can do the same thing. You can get started with a no cost, no obligation home energy assessment through Heat Smart Monroe and just connect with them and start out and get your home assessed as to how much energy you're losing and think about what you want to do. And I'm telling you right now, we're not going to have time for questions. So I will save the chat and make sure that I answer those questions for you by email, folks. But you've seen what I've done at the national, state, community, individual level, and I am challenging you to do the same. Come and join us. Take action now, folks. Join these efforts. We still have hope, as they said in Breaking Boundaries. We're at 1.1 degrees Celsius. We can't go beyond 1.5. We're at 418 parts per million. The danger boundary is 450. We really can't go there. We just cannot go there. We can reverse global warming. It's urgent that we do it in the next 8 years. You must help out at the national, state, local, or individual level, whatever you want to get involved in. I'm glad to help, and thank you. We're done.
I guess it's
Thank you for remembering.
Yeah. All right. And well, we'll just keep waiting for the popcorn to keep popping here.
Right.
When the popcorn, I'll tell you what, shall I put that? Let me put the presentation up.
Oh,
there.
hi, Hank.
I gotta
Haven't seen you in a while either. Whoops.
Let's see. I'm gonna look at my presentation,
Which we don't really
which
necessarily
we don't
have to
really
do.
need, but just in
So
case.
I just want to say we have a tendency to be over prepared just because we care so much about this. But truthfully, what we really want to do is talk about what everybody wants to talk about. You know, it occurred to me that there's a lot to say about the effect of diet on the environment, but I don't think the point is necessarily to prove that the connection is there. If you really are still questioning that, there's a lot of resources and links in the materials that we're sharing with you. Like a good place to start would be the film Cowspiracy. It's got a whole resource page where you could go to town, and there's so many links to information. If you have doubts or questions about that, I almost think that we can kind of leave that behind us. That's the starting point for what we want to do in the breakout session.
Yeah. So actually we're ahead of schedule. So why don't I actually share this presentation really quickly? And we just wanted this to spark conversation in case we didn't have anything to talk about, which is probably not too likely. I can tell this group is going to be talkative. But so here's some questions just to think about. What if saving the planet is bad for my health? Do I need to go completely plant-based to help the planet? Where will I get my protein? What about vitamin B12? Don't I need to drink milk to protect my bones? I heard that keto and paleo diets are better for you. Let's see, it's always happens when I use my mouse. There we go. So isn't it hard? Isn't it expensive? And didn't we evolve to eat meat? Also, doesn't the Bible say we can eat meat? And I love the taste of meat too much to give it up. So here's a little resource. And again, we're gonna, this will be available as a PDF. Don't worry about copying this down. And we do recommend going to see this video called A Life Connected. And again, that'll be in your resource page. It's in, it's actually on YouTube called called The Life Connected. The last 4 minutes is great. It's only a 12-minute video anyway. Again, you don't need legislation, permission, a big investment. You just need to buy and eat different food. So let's stop sharing. And I didn't want to leave that up there too long. Okay, looks like we have a nice little group. So one more time, let's everybody unmute and say hello, and then we'll start a conversation. So let's get rid of all the red microphones, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
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 Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Great, great. So who has a question they're dying to start with? Like Glenn. Glenn, you have your hand up. And you guys know how to
Yes.
read.
Hi,
Okay.
Glenn.
Hey, Glenn.
Hi, I'm delighted to meet you, Ted and Carol.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
didn't
I know
know-
you're a writer.
Yes, I didn't know about your Rochester group. Thanks for doing that.
Sure.
Thank you for all you said in the larger room before, because I was finding myself outraged by the film. I had seen it once before, and now I felt even more outraged this time.
Why did you feel
Because of
outraged?
on the positive side. My mother once said, say something positive before you say something negative. So on the positive side, if somebody was a climate skeptic or didn't understand the gravity of the situation, the film does a pretty good job of making clear the many threats to the world from climate change. So there's the positive. The negative is they just gloss over the only solution to the climate crisis, which is to end animal agriculture and reforest the world. You can't reforest the world when 37% of the non-ice land surface of the earth is used for grazing, and another 6% of the non-ice land surface of the earth is used to grow feed for cattle. And so when they talk about different crises in the film, and they talk about, for example, forest loss, well, what's causing forest loss? It's animal agriculture, but they don't say that. When they talk about the nutrient problem, well, so much of the nutrients is used to grow feed for animals. And when they talk about biodiversity, which is so important, what's the greatest cause of biodiversity loss, which is deforestation, which is caused by animal agriculture. So there is no solution to the crisis unless we transform to a vegan world and end animal agriculture. And then at the end, they make a little passing nod to it. Maybe we could move a little bit towards a flexitarian diet. No, we have to end animal agriculture, not move a little bit. And then he says something, this fellow Johan says something about move away from starch. I don't know what he's talking about. We need starch.
More starch.
There was an image of Dr. McDougall on the screen, and I thought it was going to jump out of the computer when he said that.
I know. Yeah,
So that's the only solution. And thank you for everything you said, but I'm going to try to correct you on one little thing, which is you brought up the FAO statistic of 18% of greenhouse gases from animal agriculture. That's a 2006 statistic. And in my opinion, it's wildly understating it. Goodland and Enhang in the World Watch paper in 2009 estimated greenhouse gases from animal agriculture to at least 51%.
Right.
Silas Rao in his paper, Dr. Silas Rao last year in a peer-reviewed paper said at least 87% of greenhouse gases come from animal agriculture. That's the figure that I accepted in my book, Food is Climate, is at least 87%. And as I said to Silas the other day, he was even being conservative because he's not including animal respiration, which is 25 billion animals exhaling carbon dioxide. He's not including forest maintenance fires all around the world. People with cattle ranchers are burning anything the cows don't eat on an annual basis. Nobody's measuring how much carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere from that. And then you have the ocean trawlers, the industrial fishing operations that dredge the bottom of the ocean, raising sediment, reducing the carbon capture of the ocean. Nobody can measure that, and how much industrial fishing is destroying the ocean. So when you add it all up, it may be well above 90%. It's the whole ball game, in other words.
Mhm.
And I'll sum it up just quickly with one other thing, which is that if we do what the film seemed to suggest and concentrate on the burning of fossil fuels, even if next week we're all flying on solar airplanes and heating our homes with fairy dust, and we're not burning any fossil fuels next week anywhere on the planet, the Earth still keeps heating up because of animal agriculture, because of all the deforestation, because of all the methane, because of all the nitrous oxide from animal agriculture. So you can't solve the problem that way. It's just clear logic. The only way you solve the problem is by ending animal agriculture, reforesting, sequestering more carbon dioxide, and then trying to cut down on the fossil fuels. But it's a pipe dream that we're going to cut it out immediately overnight. So that's enough of my speech, but thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah, no, Glenn, it was an
That's
honor.
wonderful.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for doing the work so that I didn't have to do that. And I think you did a much better job than I could have done. So we're very grateful to have you here. Before I call on anybody, how many people here are already on just raise your hand. How many people here are already on a plant-based diet? Or how many? Okay, and the people we can't see, so pretty much everybody. Well, that's great. Super. So maybe we are kind of preaching to the choir. So it almost becomes a question of operationalizing this. But I'm going to call on Shika Murchia, Dr. Murchia.
Yeah, hi.
Hi,
I'm Shika Murchia. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Where are you located?
So I'm in Massachusetts, south of Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been plant-based for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lifelong vegetarian. I grew up vegetarian. So, and that's what my comment and question is, like, I think I attend one of your weekly sessions that Rochester Lifestyle Institute puts out, with different cases, etc. And I love it. And that's, I think, how I got the link to this movie and, event. So I was, as you said, you're preaching to the choir. We all know this. How do we spread the message? I'm trying to start like a plant-based program in my practice. We're 100 providers. And I'm just talking to the colleagues in my suite who are 6 of us. Nobody's plant-based. Nobody's, talking about that for health and it seems like anybody I talk to, they don't seem to care. They're like, yeah, I don't really care. I don't care.
Right.
So it's a little frustrating. I actually made a packet for all my staff and my colleagues and like, hey, you know what? Let's try it for January. Let's just do it for a month. There was very little interest in it. I was like, okay. I mean, my patients, in fact, are more interested because they come to me with terrible health problems. And when I talk to them, they actually are more inclined to listen to me and maybe make changes.
Sure.
But I don't know how to spread the message more, my colleagues and my staff, everybody included. It's hard.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And it's something that we run Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. And as you heard from what I said, what totally motivates me is the climate and preserving the planet for the future. We made the switch back in 1991, just after reading the work of Dr. Dean Ornish, who demonstrated that you could reverse heart disease, which is the leading killer of people in this country, just by changing your diet and your lifestyle. So I sort of thought it was game over at that point. That's when Michael Greger also became vegan. And for those of you who don't know, nutritionfacts.org is a great resource. So our approach is very much through health. I mean, we obviously do advocate all the other things, but changing the healthcare system and making it seem normal is where we can be most effective. And so there's 2 things I just want to mention. We have this concept we call the cycle of culture change. And if you go to our website, Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, you can see how Carol and I, back in 2012, we started teaching a plant-based nutrition course. It was 6 weeks, 12 CMEs, and over 900 people in the Rochester area took it because we gave it 20 times. And we had a bunch of doctors take the course, and that's the key. first of all, doctors get sick, right? They get chronic illnesses too. And they're really thrilled when they can improve their condition. And then they tell their patients. And so in 2018, we thought, well, let's operationalize this in a way that doctors can really use this. So we came up with this 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart. We run it every month. This last month, we had 60 people from all over the country in it. And the idea is, you're a grown-up, you can do anything for 2 weeks, try this and see what happens. And we get, our record so cholesterol, doctors order cholesterol maybe once or twice a year. So because they don't realize how quickly it can change. So our record in 2 weeks is a woman who came in with a cholesterol of 299. And on day 15, it was 149. It dropped 150 points, right? And we typically see drops of 40 to 80 points all the time in 2 weeks. So, instead of having to take pills, which have side effects, we have you change your diet, and the side effects are all positive instead of negative. So that's what we've done. In fact, there are a few, for the medical people in the audience, Epic is this big electronic health record system. And we actually are something that can be ordered in 2 Epic systems now, one in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and also one locally in Rochester. And that's one of our goals, is to get it so it's just something a doctor can click on and order it. They don't have to know about the diet. They just have to say, well, I have a patient who might be interested. So reach out to me personally. And we actually have, a program actually to work with other organizations and to help you with that cycle of culture change. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Colleen.
Hi there, and thank you so much. This is,
sure.
I feel really grateful to have had access to all this information. Just a little quick background. My parents were pediatricians for health reasons. They went on the Ornish diet. We experienced all the benefits that you are saying. But since they don't do my shopping and cooking for me, I have gone back to being just vegetarian. So I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about this program that you just mentioned is in the Epic system, and maybe some more supports to help me get back on an all plant diet, and not just the diet, but I want to flourish it and get my son enticed to it.
We love
Thank
it.
you so much.
Yeah, sure. So actually, one of my colleagues just typed into the chat a link to about our Jumpstart. So we run the Jumpstart every month. We have always a few people who have been on a vegan diet or vegetarian for a long time and just don't understand why their health isn't better than it is. And so take a look at that. And you use the word flourish. We also have run a program called the Lift Project, which meets 1 hour a week for 10 weeks. And it's all about all the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And there's a lot of support with that. So we have several and these are all facilitated on Zoom. It's one of the silver linings of the pandemic. Is that we've gotten pretty good at using Zoom now. And so it's just really so much fun and so powerful. I actually think that eventually it's going to bring about world peace, because we have these little rectangles of people from everywhere. And, I think so take a look at those programs. Go to our website, and Carol wants to say.
Yeah, I just want to say a few people have sent messages, and I happen to have their private email addresses. I will get back to you after this, but it makes me think that I'd like to ask everyone if you could type your email into the chat, because I would like at least the email and the contact info for everybody in this group. I would dearly love to have it. And I won't share that information with anyone. I'll just stay in touch with you.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
That you put your email in the chat, and everybody email you their address.
Sounds good.
Okay.
You want to, should I just do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hang on. I'll do it.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Okay.
It's hard when you're sharing a computer.
We got to send it to everybody.
Yeah.
We'll get it there. Okay. Actually, Bob, could you type my email? Actually, Bob, why don't you put in the info? Or you can put mine, drveggie@gmail.com. Yeah, if you could type, that'd be great. Thanks. All right, Linda Greco, you look familiar.
Yes,
How do I know you?
from Jumpstart.
Okay, the Jumpstart, got it.
I did January Jumpstart.
Okay.
Something that I came across recently, and unfortunately I was looking for something else, and I didn't track where I saw it. And one thing that has concerned me actually for a very long time is the lack of biodiversity within the edible plant kingdom. It appears that seeds are controlled by 4 major corporations from across the world, such that diversity in cuisine across the world is becoming more and more homogeneous. And this is not only caused by seeds being controlled, but also corporate food providers, fast food restaurants, corporate chains, various things like that. And I'm just wondering if you have anything to say about that.
Well, I totally agree with you. It's obviously not something that we really focus on, but I think it is really important. People should can learn to garden on their own and use what are the old seeds? Heirloom seeds.
And also supporting organic farmers, maybe purchasing a farm share in a CSA if you don't, or shopping at farmers markets for organic food, or both, if you don't garden yourself, or both and all of those things.
The modern food supply has been engineered to be very shelf stable. And that's, one of the reasons people get worried about omega-3 fatty acids is because omega-3 fatty acids are unstable. So they've been taken out of the food supply to some extent. So one of our rules is always try to eat food that can spoil, right? You got to get it fresh. You got to eat it right away. Go for the food that can spoil. That's going to be your healthiest. But that's a great point. Thanks a lot, Linda. Joanne Sheldon. Hi, we can't hear you. You're muted. Your hand is up, but you're muted.
I'm muted. I was trying to get my hand down, but then I'll do that later.
Okay.
But anyway, so thank you for doing this. And I just want to say, personally, like probably almost everybody here, I'm a very committed vegan, and it's been kind of my interest really for decades in my life. I mean, I'm just reading books. I've been doing it for years and years, what I do for fun. So anyway, about the topic.
Carol.
Yeah, I just love it. I mean, my husband was really, he got kind of tired of it after a while until he took the Jumpstart program that you just did recently.
Okay.
And it's amazing the effect that it had on him, such a great effect. And now we're eating the same food and it's like, it's so wonderful. But my question is, I've been exploring different areas of the climate crisis and to see which area I can be an activist in. And I've tried out different things, and I don't know, because I'm so drawn to this area, this is where I want to work, but I'm not sure how I can do things beyond. I mean, I think I'm okay with my personal, individual action and family, but I just wondered if you have any ideas for how I can have a broader effect. I know about Rochester Area Vegan Society. I used to go years ago. I used to go to that, and that was good. But just in terms of just such a short window that we have ahead of us in terms of solving the climate crisis, what can I do to really have the largest impact on the world? That's asking a lot, but just what do you suggest that I do in terms of being an activist?
Wow, that's such a great question. And let me just back up for a second. So Carol and I, we run the Rochester Vegan Society, but most of our efforts now are in Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, just because that's where, my experience and skills are and where I have, the most credibility, I think. And we seem to be changing a lot of lives just by talking about people's health. And then once we get them convinced that it's not dangerous to do this, that it's actually really good for you, then we sort of start talking about the environmental aspects about why this is so important, why it's going to be helpful if you want your grandchildren and great-grandchildren to have good lives. And I think it really connects with people. So, I don't really have a great answer. I mean, we're going to put solar panels on our house eventually. We're going to plant more trees.
But Joanne is asking what she can do in the area of diet. It's a really.
Are you asking about diet specifically?
I think so, because that's what most interests her. And it's a really good question. I think one of the things you can do is cook for people. But, because I know my brother lives in another community. He and his wife, they're not involved with the Vegetarian Society in their community, but they have neighborhood dinners where they serve vegan food to everybody. But it's a little hard for the time being. It's a little hard with COVID, just like getting together with the Rochester Area Vegan Society is hard. I mean, that's something that I assume we'll be able to resume on some terms. But I think, you know, don't underestimate how powerful you are with your friends and family and people you do share food with.
You know what else? So one of the things that we're running up against now is actually just awareness. So really, and I hate to use the term marketing, but that's really, we have our organization has an incredible capacity to see participants in our Jumpstart. So if we can get more people to do Jumpstart and our other programs, it would really be fantastic. One of the things when we designed it was to make it very scalable. So, you know, our goal is to start seeing 300 people a month. We're at about 60 a month now. But, you know, in a couple of years, we'd like to be at 300 a month. We'd like to be doing thousands a month. It's possible the way we've designed it to make it. And now that we do it all on Zoom, it's way more possible than it was in 2018, because in 2018, we were doing it live in our office. So yeah, so if you have any ideas, and if you want to just reach out to us directly, so Bob Frankie has put his email in there. He's our communications director. He's put it in the chat. So it's, was it robert.frankie@rocklifemed.org. Yeah, that would be great. Just reach out to us. We, you know, we'll be happy to use your skills in any way that we think we can. So great. And connections on social media, that type of thing. So yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you for that, Joanne. That was really inspiring. Priya, am I pronouncing that right?
It's Priya. Hi.
Priya. Are you related?
I'm actually, yes, I'm Shika's daughter.
Oh, okay.
So I was invited to this by her and my father because they're very, very interested in the plant-based diet and everything. So when they introduced the plant-based diet to me and my sisters, we were kind of hesitant at first. We love our cheese. We've grown up drinking chocolate milk and everything. But as we've all seen, when we've changed our diets, we've seen innumerable changes and kind of just the way that we live our lives and how good we feel on a daily basis. And so I'm a student at Northeastern University, and I kind of have always been intrigued by, you know, the urban environment and the hospitality sector and everything. And so kind of what I've been really interested in focusing on in some of my classes and some of the papers I've been writing is how the notion that elegant food, especially served at these fancy restaurants, is always equivalent to these fancy cheeses or really rare meats. And that's what's expensive and what's really well presented to the general population. And so I've been doing research in a bunch of restaurants kind of around the country that are fully plant-based. I don't know if you've heard of Matthew Kenny. He has about 40 different companies and restaurants around America. And so just kind of, I was wondering, like, do you guys think this is an important endeavor to kind of be interested in, or do you think there's other ways to present it? I just think for a young population, this is an interesting sector to go into just because people are so drawn to this elegant hospitality sector. So yeah, your thoughts on that. And kind of, I'm also searching for a co-op, and my dream co-op is to leave Boston because I've been in Boston forever, but to also work and kind of understand the operations behind what goes into creating a fully plant-based restaurant, if not whole food plant-based restaurant, and kind of how to present that to the general population in terms of helping the environment, helping our bodies, and also at the same time eating foods that are also fancy and super cool and look presentable and all that stuff. So
wow, so really great points, and thank you for that. I mean, it's great when we have somebody of your generation being so interested in this and passionate about it. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, there's no reason we can't do this in an elegant fashion. I mean, you know, there are, you know, Miyoko's cheese, for example. You're familiar with her? Yeah, I mean, we know Miyoko quite well, and we were there at the very beginning when she started doing it at, you know, Vegetarian Summerfest. You know, there is a little bit of a challenge with making really delicious vegan food also healthy. But as far as saving the planet, I don't think it has to be healthy. That's a different issue, right? But when people come to us, obviously we have to talk to them about, you know, being really healthy. And I think you can do it in a really elegant way that's also healthy. So, you know, low fat, unprocessed food is great. I don't, Carol, do you have any suggestions?
As to your question as to whether we think it's important, when it comes to plant-based, I always want all of the above, everything, you know, all fronts. So just like Ted said, you know, yeah, we want super healthy, whole food plant-based, but I'm also celebrating all the vegan commercial products, which have gotten better, by the way. They've gotten more delicious. They've gotten healthier too. And it was so interesting because we had Brenda Davis, if you all know who she is. She's like the extraordinary nutritionist. She's such a world expert.
Oh.
And somebody asked her what she thought about Impossible Burgers and Beyond Burgers. She said she thought they were wonderful
Right.
because they introduced people to plant-based diet. So
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, I refer to them as transition foods, and for people getting.
some of us have been in transition
Yeah,
for 25 years. though,
exactly.
so.
And the thing is, if you're already starting out healthy and you haven't been eating junk food all your life, you know, having these sort of richer plant-based delicacies, I think, are fine.
On an occasional basis.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's the problem is that most Americans have already kind of gone past the tipping point, as it were, and really need to. Yeah, so we have 1 minute left. It looks like. Carl, did you?
Yeah,
have,
let's
yeah,
talk to you.
thanks, Carl. What's up?
Just really quickly, you said choose foods that can spoil, but in terms of this ties in with the other group, the zero waste group. Should we be like maybe advocating like frozen foods and canned foods instead, so that we use less food and waste less food?
Yeah, I think frozen food is fine. I also think we need to learn how to compost. I think everybody ought to be able to have a compost in their yard. You don't need to hire a service. You know, if you have, you know, one of my best memories is somebody we met at a vegetarian summerfest who said, my yard is 100% runoff free. Basically, trees, leaves, anything, it's all stays in his yard. And now we have this thing where in suburbia where everybody puts their leaves out on the sidewalk to be picked up by the town. That's incredibly nutritious material. It ought to stay on your yard. You ought to be using it to, you know, enrich the soil in your yard, prevent runoff, grow vegetables if you want.
When you think of zero waste, I guess, you know, I'm making a little bit of an assumption that we know what zero waste is, but I'm going to also share that that generally with the zero waste movement, you know, there is a goal of nothing in the landfill. And with that goal, it's a pretty big one. And as you make a commitment as a household that you want to move toward a zero waste lifestyle, it's important to kind of have some of the concepts in mind, because you're going to start making some of your choices differently. The more you learn about the environmental impact of your choices within your home, then you will see that you need to, you know, it's helpful to have a framework for the why of that. And on a larger level, when it comes to the system is, you know, what are we talking about with zero waste? We're really thinking about how do we begin to practice prevention. We want to prevent the waste from entering the landfill stream to begin with. And I think that the more those of us learn about the systems that are in place, we'll realize that they're actually stacked against us in this day and age, because so many of the choices that we want to make, if we go to like look for products or look for local fruits and vegetables, we may find that the way the system is set up that we'll have limited options. So we start to look at what are ways that we can actually begin to prevent waste from coming into our homes. So zero waste is about preventing the waste from entering the landfill to begin with, and also taking a look at the life cycle of the products that we buy. So that needs to happen differently. Just like it was said in the film, we need to start looking at how our products, are they going to be designed so that they can eventually be reused? So that's kind of just an overall little introduction to like what the field itself kind of covers. But as an individual household, what are the choices that we make? And what are the considerations that we have as we look at the principles of zero waste, and are we actually doing them in our homes? So when I first started working at Impact Earth, I had participated in Project Drawdown, and we had already started to like examine the choices within our own household. And so I put together for Impact Earth an assessment of all the different choices that you think about or that you do when you're managing your home. And they were grouped under these principles of zero waste that you kind of see on the slide. I'm not going to move the slide around a lot. We're going to kind of stick with this slide here. And the principles of zero waste include refuse and reduce, reuse, food and compost, recycle and refurbish, and support community. And if you'd like to kind of follow along with this assessment, what you can do is bring up and you have a phone, you can bring up the camera on your phone, don't take a picture, but hold it up to the QR code, that little white square that you'll see on your computer screen. And if you hold it up to there with your camera, you're going to pull up a link to the assessment that we created at Impact Earth. And you can follow along as I go through the different areas and some of the different choices. We won't go through each question, but you could do this survey kind of in tandem to this presentation. And what the assessment does, it has you look at the different choices and you rate them according to kind of on a scale between, do I already do this, to I can't imagine ever doing that. So basically it lists the choices under these zero waste categories, and it also kind of tells you the environmental impact of those particular choices. If you're not able to do this like while we're doing this, when you get sent the resources later, you could pull up the survey too. But I did want to mention it for those who would like to kind of follow along. Because basically, as I mentioned, this was organized to kind of get you thinking about, all right, you know, I want to do something. I want to do something within my own power, within our own home, to contribute positively to moving the dial. So when we look at this goal of reducing the waste in our homes, the first thing that we really need to do is we need to reduce what's coming into our homes. We simply need to purchase less, or to think about our purchases differently. So, you know, asking yourself some questions around, do I really need this? Or where is this product going to end up at the end of its life cycle? Is it going to be recycled? Can I reuse it? Is it going to just end up in the landfill? So we're starting to think about reducing what we're bringing in, and also refusing cheaply made goods, refusing those free samples, refusing the things that are going to be the extra accumulation in our home. And do we think about that? So some of the questions along in the choices on the assessment do have to do with thinking about why you're purchasing a product, kind of restraining from impulse buying, and looking at purchasing more durable goods. So that's what's actually in that section. The next area has to do with reusing, recycling, or actually reusing our goods. And this is when I mentioned in the 5-minute presentation, this is where we're actually looking at the packaging around all the things that we purchase, because so many things today are purchased in plastic. And if you've researched that area at all, it's very, very discouraging. Only 9% of the plastic that has been invented since the 1950s has actually gotten recycled. And because we're actually producing so much plastic for single use, we are really we've really created a monster. So as we're looking at our own homes for bringing in less, one of the things that is really helpful to do is get a handle on what your home is accumulating. So when you're doing that, you'll probably first look in your trash. So, you know, some people literally go and pull out their trash and look in their trash and see what's in there. You can do that, or you could actually say, for 1 week, I'm going to make a list of the things going in my trash. And that's a little bit cleaner way to do it. But actually pay attention to what you're accumulating in your trash and also in your recycle bin. And when you start to see like what you accumulate the most of, those can be indicators of what you might want to start swapping out, or looking at whether or not your household can swap out a product so that you're producing less of that type of trash. So the section in the assessment has a number of product swaps for plastic, and we also have product swaps for single use in that section of the assessment. The next area, food and compost. So, I mentioned it in the 5-minute presentation about what happens to food when it goes in the trash. And, to me personally, that's such an important step that if you're able to do it, keep that food waste out of the trash. It's probably the most important thing you can do, because it's also one of the few choices on this list of zero waste lifestyle that you actually have control over. Because so many of the other ones, you can be roadblocked by the systems. So just to know that, like, our composting service, we're commercial composting. So if you do choose to divert your food waste with our service, you can actually put more things into the bucket. You can put meat bones in the bucket. You could put dairy in the bucket. You can put things in the bucket that you wouldn't be able to do in your backyard compost. But there's many ways to do that, and certainly a backyard compost is also really awesome to have. So so the questions in this part of the assessment, look at not only are you diverting your food waste, but also taking a look at the food waste that you accumulate. So and that is some adjustments maybe in your shopping practice and in how you cook. And there's different ways to even avoid accumulating more food waste than you're doing right now. So that's another area within the zero waste lifestyle. The next section, recycle and refurbish, really has to do with, not only what's going in your recycling bin, but being aware of the recycling rules. Very, very important. Recycling is important and it's a good first step, but it should not be the last step, because we want to make sure that, again, we're accumulating less things that we even have to process. But when it comes to recycling, please be aware of your recycling rules, particularly in Monroe County, and avoid wish cycling. And that's where you put something in the recycle bin that you wish would be recycled, but you're not, but you don't really know for sure whether it is. And I have to say that the Monroe County website is very, very thorough. There's so much information on there, everything cross-references, and it really answers your questions. But where you still have questions, there's a Facebook group that you can ask questions of. Zero Waste Rochester has a Facebook group. You can post questions. So it's a good practice to have within your household, along with refurbishing your goods and finding out where can I donate things and where can I get secondhand goods. So those are the first 4 principles of zero waste, followed by the last one, which I think really ties things together, and that is supporting your community. And so, as you start to make different changes, you're going to want to be able to know that in your community, you can do that. In our region, you can do that. If you are switching to bulk foods, what stores will allow you to bring a container and be able to fill up, your bulk foods? What restaurants actually will give you their takeout and leftovers can you bring home in compostable containers? Is something to be aware of. The local fruits and vegetables. So as we learn more about the issues affecting the environment, that will be another important piece to share information and support those businesses that are kind of creating solutions to the problems that we see. So this was kind of a very quick overview of the sections of zero waste that does fit in with our assessment. I wanted to cover them fairly quickly so we have time to kind of remove the slide and also discuss. But I'd like you to think about is, as I was kind of sharing, going through those zero waste principles and the different practices that you have, when you think about your own household and your own family, which ones are you doing? Which ones do you got a handle on right now? Which of these principles do you feel like you're already regularly practicing and you're kind of proud of? And then where does your household need support? And this is where I'd like to focus some of our discussion in the next half, where I'm going to remove the slide. And to begin with, why don't, let's use the chat to record either, an area that your household needs support, or any questions or anything that you'd like to see addressed in this next. We've got about, we're about halfway through, so we have about 12 minutes left to this breakout session. And I'm going to stop sharing my slide. And let's see.
Yeah, it's a whole site. Are you thinking of switching up your frame style? I broke my glasses. I'll show you.
And in the I'm gonna look up, okay, so in the chat, taking a quick look here.
I went to touch my eye and my finger went right through.
All right, I'm going to just go backward here and just see if I can answer some of the questions in the chat. And also I'll just kind of, mention, so we have, somebody mentioned the Buy Nothing site in Webster as a good resource. And there was a question about a retirement community, and yes, Impact Earth does do pick up in neighborhoods, so I'm sure that they would do a retirement community as well, because when they're in the area, then they can do the pickups. So the question about recycling, kind of eliminating some of the plastic recycling. Many of you might be aware that it's not based upon the number, but it's based upon the shape. And that has to do with the thinness actually of the plastic, because many of the plastics can get caught in the machines. It's kind of, the machine is registering that as paper and not as plastic. A question about whether Impact Earth gives guidance for composting at home, and that is one of the that is actually one of the workshops that we have offered. We're actually I would like to see where we have some like video instruction that you can tap into when it comes to learning how to do that at home as well. See, I just bought laundry, so I want them to reduce. Yeah. And yes, the laundry sheets are safe for the environment. Okay, so let me open up. Okay, oops. Sorry about that. I am, okay. I was trying to change my view so I could see more of you in here, and for some reason I only have a small. The small screen. So one of the things that, yes, and I just had a request for people to mute unless you're asking a question. That's what I was trying to choose. Okay, sorry folks. So I was having, okay, here we go. Okay, I'm back. So just as Jim was saying, or as Steve was saying, the technical aspect of managing a conversation without a small group was my challenge. So we have. I went quickly through the, I went quickly through the zero waste categories. Maybe right now, just for some general things on my part, is for how many people, you can do a raise hand virtually or or with your raised hand, how many of you feel like your household has already made an intention to move towards zero waste? And you could do a virtual hand or, okay, great, great. And do you feel like you have a handle on your progress there? A hand if you feel like you really kind of know the direction that you have, and even some next steps. Okay, so we have a few that are here. Yeah. So the one thing I think at this point too, we're trying to really understand at Impact Earth the best way for our community to be supported. And how can we bring to, and we want to be able to bring together the different communities who already have this on their radar screen and also expand it out to people we know. So, so one of the things about that assessment that I shared on the screen here, I really hope that if you haven't done it here, that when the resources come back, that you actually take a few minutes to do that and send me some feedback on that, because we would really, we really want to start to understand, like, what are the areas that that we need to improve on, even in our region. So so as you're looking at the choices there of how are you doing, then the second part of the reflection is, okay, well, what's my next step? So so that's my next question. With your household, if you think about the coming year, do you know what your zero waste intention would be? And if you feel like you have a clear direction of this is the next thing that our household could do, then raise your hand. And if not, then some things to consider are what motivates your household? And what are your pain points in your household? So the part around motivating, what motivates your household is your household motivated? Are you motivated by seeing that you're addressing a very important environmental impact? So if you're motivated by that, then you may be looking at those, maybe being in alignment with our mission, which is, diverting the food waste and reducing that single-use consumption. So, what are some of the areas that you can have the greatest impact? And then you're also looking at what are you doing instead? So that's another area that you can move toward. We're hoping that, and I have to make sure that I stay on track of the time here. We're hoping that with the follow-up to this session, there's going to be some questions about whether or not you would want to continue to gather around really understanding your impact with moving toward a zero waste lifestyle, and sharing resources and sharing, the things that you want to learn, you want to know, and that we move toward that. So we will be having we'll be having some scheduled meetings with Impact Earth, and you can continue to learn a little bit more about us. Other things that you put in the chat for us to address for this session, because it's a little bit hard for me to read all the chat and then try to address it. I'm going to be saving the chat, and so we can go through that. So you'll be asked if you want to kind of continue this section here, and any other questions you might have about zero waste. Does somebody have a question they want to ask before we leave the room? And Okay, Carol. Carol, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Am I the Carol?
Yeah, Carol Manuel?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. Because we have a service that picks up our trash, and then a separate truck comes by for the recyclables. And we have 2 bins, one for paper, one for metal and plastic. And my husband observed something once or twice where he felt that the recyclables were being just dumped into the regular trash. Is that a problem where the recyclables were not handled properly?
I haven't heard that from the curbside pickup. I think that sometimes you might hear of that like in some residential settings, but with curbside, I have not heard that in any of like the county reports on that.
Okay. Well, ours is curbside. I mean, it's in our neighborhood, and that was kind of discouraging to me because I thought, and also I had read an article in the newspaper in the DNC not too long ago, maybe even a year, where there was a problem with recyclables because they were not economically, the economics of it were not what they should be. And so people were getting less and less interested in recycling because of the money that couldn't get for paper and things like that. Is that true?
Well, there definitely have been there have been some areas of recycling where the demand for what's actually being paid for from that had decreased. I still have to learn a little bit more about what actually is happening within our county. And so it sounds like that's a topic that you would like some more information on. So I'm going to make note of that as an area that we would like to be able to share more information. We actually are going to be closing out our breakout room. It's actually starting to count down now. So I thank you for coming. I apologize for not being able to navigate my question back and forth in my presentation a little bit better. But I hope that we'll be able to continue this conversation in the future.
So, while we're waiting for Will to put that up, I'll just talk a little bit about it. I'm guessing everybody in this room has a pretty good idea what deforestation is. So we all get to see pictures of what's happening in the Amazon. And I think when I first started to really become aware of it was when I started reading and learning about clear cutting in the Pacific Northwest and how huge hillsides and tracts of land were being stripped of trees of all size. And it's one thing we're losing the capability when we take out these trees, and especially the big ones. The ancient trees, the older trees, are the ones that do the most efficient job on this capturing carbon and sequestration. But we're losing the ability to hold the soil together and keep it from being blown away and washed away. People, especially on the West Coast, that have been going through the wildfires that have increased in severity and frequency so much in the last few years, are also seeing what that loss looks like after the fact, and not only using the beauty and all those physical immediate benefits of laying our eyes on the trees, but the stability of the soil and so much else that goes with it. Next slide. Yeah, just another picture of what we all know about deforestation. Things dry out, the wind picks picks up a lot of the soil particles and takes them to the nearest stream or pond or river or whatever. And the soils that take thousands and hundreds of thousands of years to be built get lost virtually overnight in comparison. Next slide, Will. And the next slide. So in addition to reforestation, there's another act that you may know about, and that's afforestation. And that's, as it says here, the active process of establishing a forest, especially on land not previously forested. And so, for example, areas of the world that have become deserts, there are efforts being made to afforest those regions again, those areas, and bring them back to something more useful, if you will, in the short term, and certainly more useful in the long term in terms of carbon sequestration and so on. But there's a trade-off too. If land like savanna or let's say in this country, prairie land out in the Midwest, if we suddenly decide to go in the direction of planting millions and millions of trees where they haven't been before, the trade-off is we're losing an ecosystem that's been there for millennia as well. And the truth of the matter is, we don't really understand to a large degree the benefits and necessity of a lot of these ecosystems. We're just starting to get a little bit of a handle on it. And next slide, Will. So reforestation, the process of replanting an area of trees. And, you know, I think of reforestation, usually when this happens, it's seedling, that's small plants like you see in this picture here. The million plus trees that I mentioned before that I planted, the vast majority of those were seedlings. They were 2 or 3, 4-year-old trees grown from seed and outplanted. And in many cases, I planted those to be harvested as Christmas trees. And somebody once said to me, well, it's kind of pointless to plant 1 million trees if you're going to harvest them all. And the reality is I probably harvest somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 trees in my life. The other 900,000 plus were planted to be reforested and to grow on. And one more slide, Will. And, you know, I didn't set out to plant trees like that. It just became an annual event for me. There was years I planted as few as a few hundred trees, and several years when I hit almost 100,000 in a year. And started out when I was pretty young and naive, and when our planet was still pretty healthy and robust. When I look back on it now, I have a lot of gratitude for the direction that spirit took me in. And even though I'm retired, I have all intention of continuing to plant. I talked earlier about the benefit of talking about the climate crisis in the state of the world. And I think this is probably a good time to kind of open it up for conversation amongst this group. Looks like we've got 23 people in this room, if I'm reading this right. And I would just like to know what you folks think. Going to invite you to unmute yourself if they can do that well. It's a small enough group with 23 that I think we can just have a conversation. And I'll say, if you've got questions for me, feel free to ask. I could talk more about the spiritual side of trees, I think, than I can, in some ways, the practical side, but let's see where it'll go. So anybody who feels like tossing something out there, a observation, a question, concern, how to? Gloria, did I see your hand go up? You want to unmute yourself? Can we do that, Will?
Yep, I don't.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Trees, I very much understand the spiritual connection with trees and have had wonderful experiences. I also, there's a book, The Hidden Life of Trees.
Yes.
Do you know that one? It's really wonderful. And it talks about how the trees communicate with each other. You know, which is pretty spectacular. And there's a movie that I think we watched it a couple of times, and it is called The Forest by Diane Bergsford Kroger. She's a scientist, and she shows all over the world, you know, some of the things that when you're in the forest, how there's elements in the air that actually help people in many ways. You know, so it's a wonderful movie.
Thanks, Gloria. Will, I have a question for you. So, Gloria, if you would be willing to type those in the chat, and then Will, if you can capture what ends up being in the chat later, so it can be added to the handouts.
Sure.
I'm sure. I know I would like that, and probably others would as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I just want to jump in with an addition on a book, and there's probably a lot of other suggestions. But Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard.
Finding the Mother Tree.
You know, it's kind of in the same vein as what Gloria was talking about with that book. And in fact, I think Suzanne quotes him a little bit in her book, and highly recommend it. It's terrific.
Yeah.
Who else wants to jump in?
There are a couple, I guess one question in the chat from Nancy, but Barbara would also like to know whether there is a group in our area that plants trees on public property, like schools, for instance.
Yes, Color Bright and Green plants trees. We have a nursery. If you want any trees, we have them. You can pay us for them, or you can just have them. And if you know of any schools or parks, we've planted them there, let us know, or churches or anything.
Can any of us help with that?
Yes. If you wanna help, send an email to info@colorbrightongreen.org. You don't have to be from Brighton. We'll plant trees anywhere in the county. And if you want to drive in from out of the county to get some trees to plant in a different county, that's cool too.
So it's Color Brighton?
colorbrightongreen.org. info@colorbrightongreen. I'll stick it in the chat for you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Very much.
I have planted, or had planted actually a couple trees on our very small yard. And I'm very happy with that. I don't know.
So in a little bit, I'm going to share a slide that lists some various ways that people can help out. My friend Sharon has a saying that you probably have heard before about giving time, talent, and treasure. And so there's a lot of local areas wherever you happen to live where you can do a little bit of research and find ways to get involved, either by putting your own physical energy into it or some of your financial funds, or maybe time helping to organize a little bit a tree planting endeavor. I know in the Rochester area, the Sierra Club does a planting for the last several years in the springtime. I know that's on the calendar to do again this year. But there's some tremendous organizations across the globe. And that slide I'm going to put up, Will, would you put that up now? It only lists a tiny few. I went in and Googled it, and I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of terrific ones. The Nature Conservancy is one that I've been a part of for 30 years. Their approach is a little different. They buy up land. That's not all they do, but to a large degree, they buy large tracts of land to protect biodiversity and to keep pathways for wildlife to move back and forth in ways that have been restricted by modern agriculture and building of infrastructure and so on. And they're also taking great steps to protect watersheds and everything connected with that. There's just a huge number of these organizations out there. Have you got that slide, Will?
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
This is in the other handout you sent me, right?
No, it's the one with all the links on it.
Okay. Yep, I think I have it. I'm just.
The reason I wanted Will to show that one now is because the one right at the very top here, this Rojava, when I was researching this stuff a little bit, I discovered this organization, and this is a worldwide organization, but Rojava, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, it's in northern Syria. And if any of you have seen pictures of the devastation in Syria in the last decade, you know that most of the country has just been turned to rubble. And this organization is replanting the rubble to trees. They're doing it in large swaths and tracts. And I just found it fascinating. I would highly urge you to when you get a little bit of time, click on that one and go check it out, see what's there. I'm just going to quickly go down through these others, and it pretty much speak for themselves. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about them because it's just something that you can go and look at, and you can dig a little deeper yourself. There's some music coming through. Somebody's.
I think it stopped now. It looks like Patty is.
Okay. So who else wants to put something out there?
I think Patty has had a hand up for a while now.
Patty and then Sue.
Hi, Steve. Well, you probably know, I eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff. So much so I just realized that, here's the book that's right by my head because I've been working with it a lot this week, which is Dave Jackie's Edible Forest Gardening book. So one of the things that just makes me so excited, I think a lot of people get stopped because they think about only acting by planting large forests or planting monocrops of forests, which again, if folks are planting any sort of forest, I encourage you to learn about polycultures. These are companion plants that go with trees. So, I think about this stuff all the time, and I got really excited when I did a presentation a couple of years ago at a natural building conference, looking at Paul Hawkins' drawdown list of the top 100 activities. And I realized that out of the top 20, 12 of them were about how we use our land and grow food. And so this model that nature has given us of the forest is a really incredible and powerful model to help us not only with reversing climate chaos, but also with how to provide better for ourselves, because we can use this model that the forest has of the overstory and the understory and the shrub layer and the herbaceous layer, the vine layer, the rhizomatic layer, the fungal layer. All these layers, combine them together to grow food for ourselves in food forest gardens and be creating habitat for animals, reforesting the land, holding the soil, all those good things that the forests do. And I want to just encourage people. I could talk about this for a long time because I often do present on this topic, but I'll just say a few more things. One is that we are so lucky because in this part of the world, the natural ecosystem primarily is a temperate, deciduous forest. So if we use that model that already exists and we use it to how we manage our lawns and create edible landscaping, or if we're lucky to have some more land and we can do something a little bit bigger and plant, food forest gardens. And a forest structure doesn't always have to have a huge oak tree as the tallest layer. Like if you have a small space, your tallest tree might be a Juneberry, or an Aronia or something like that. So it's a really powerful way that we can reverse climate disruption, that we can feed ourselves, and also to think about these polycultures. There are some really great examples happening. Most of my work is with homeowners and organizations and businesses. So I haven't yet moved out to the farm scale, but one of my permaculture pals, John Niger, started Big River Chestnuts in Connecticut. And that is a beautiful model for reforesting a piece of land, having it provide a crop. 4 years later, they've already, started harvesting a great small but mighty chestnut crop. They are using these polycultures. They've incorporated things like chickens. There are multiple people, so it's an intentional community. Not in that people are living there, but there's someone who comes and tends the chickens. There's a few people who attend to the nut crops. So Big River Chestnuts is a great example for what we can do, and we have a little bit more of land, and we want to reforest it, provide food, and repair the ecosystem. And thanks. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Patty. Sue, and then Rosalind, and I don't know if I'm missing any other hands, but those are the two I saw. Sue, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just speak briefly. I wanted to mention another resource. I don't know if any of you have run across Chris McCarthy, lives in Pittsford, but he, for the last several years, has created a Facebook page called 10,000 Trees. So if we could get that onto those resources list, but he's really committed. He took one of our drawdown courses and was passionate about afforestation. So he's definitely into this world. I'm sorry he isn't here today, but he really is passionate about reforestation. So some of the other things that you've all been talking about might be wonderful to add to his Facebook page, to get it more vibrant and to get communications going. So I'd recommend, and I'm assuming you all have already talked about the Overstory. When you're talking about books, as to me, that was just, it's fiction, but it is so powerful about the power of trees. So Richard Powers' book.
Yeah, you're the first to mention it, but it is a terrific book. So
I highly recommend that as well. So do you want me to write those things down in the?
Anybody who's mentioned a book, if you would type it in the chat. Okay. Thanks, Sue. Rosalind?
Over the past semester, I have volunteered at Cummings Nature Center, and it was a wonderful experience. I worked with their forest school groups, and the children I worked with are between the ages of 4 and 10 years old. And this generation of forest school children are being brought up to really understand and appreciate forests and all of the connections that we're talking about here. And so it's very hopeful that this next generation will take on an understanding and promote the health and well-being of the forest, since it is so innate to their upbringing. And the Rochester Museum and Science Center is a great supporter of this, and anyone who wants to can volunteer in this capacity. There are many, many opportunities for learning and helping out and promoting learning and health and well-being of the forest at Cummings Nature Center, which is a fabulous resource for our community.
Thanks, Rosalind. Anybody else? We've got just a couple more minutes. Jack?
Thanks, Steve. I'm a native of the Rochester area, but I'm now living in a small city in New Hampshire. And I'm on our city's Conservation Commission, and we recently are in the process of putting together a tree policy to protect trees that are on our public property, on the city's property. And we intend, when we publicize and public that tree policy, to have kind of a program about trees and the importance of trees in our community, not just as habitats for animals, but also as you mentioned, or somebody mentioned about trees helping human beings in their spirits. And there's plenty of studies that show that living near trees makes people more productive and improves their well-being. But in watching this, I've gotten the idea that part of our program will be to provide trees for our city's residents, for them to plant. And although this is a conservation commission, and I don't know if there's communities in the Rochester area that have similar commissions that could put together a program about trees and educating people about the importance of trees, and then also providing trees for people. But if there are not that kind of organizations, those public organizations, there are certainly or groups like the Coming Nature, or some of the things that have already been mentioned, that could put together a program that would educate community members, and then also help them do something about use the information they learned by planting some trees.
Thanks, Jack. Will, would you put that last slide up for me, please?
Yep. You mean the one with the resources?
We're going to get kicked out of this room in a moment or so. And thanks everybody for your comments and your questions and your wisdom. And yeah, that one right there. I just wanted to share this little piece that I came across that I'll let you read it to yourself. It's a little bit of that spiritual connection that I was referring to earlier, the kind of energy that I get from trees. And if you haven't gone out and connected with a tree recently, I highly recommend it. And we often talk about, you can take it down now, Will, thanks. We often talk about grandfather trees or grandmother trees. And, there's a big attraction to these big old champion trees of the forest. But I would invite you to connect with a 10-year-old tree too, and a 20-year-old tree, and just be in space with another being like that, a being that's got its roots sunk deep into the earth and doesn't get pushed around and moving around, but rather it's kind of stoic, and it stands there and it sees what life has to offer. Looks like we're about done. 50 seconds. Anybody got a last word they want to throw in there?
I would just like to thank you, Steve. Thank you, and thank everybody that's spoken. I have enjoyed it immensely. I was looking forward to your group the most right from the get-go, and I'm so glad to listen. It's just been heartwarming. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, folks, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you in the big room here. And thanks for joining in.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.